Welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to our segment Once Upon a Time in the Outer Rim, where we cover all of the Outer Rim shows. But today we are specifically covering the Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 4, The Gathering Storm. And with me for this and all of these other episodes is Alex Kane. Welcome back, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
So this episode again was written by Jon Favreau. It really seems like he wrote the whole entire series.
Yeah.
And it was directed by Kevin Tancharoen. Tancharoen. It was directed by Kevin Tancharoen, who is most well known for directing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but has kind of an awkward connection to the rest of geek fandom, mainly because of one person. Okay. Do you want to hear how he's connected to everybody in geek fandom?
I mean, I have like a prediction, but should I do the prediction?
All right, do the prediction.
Are you gonna say JJ?
No.
No. Okay.
No, but it's
carry on.
It's even more awkward given this last week's news and who came out and said, you know, answer. So
Whedon.
His sister is Marissa Tantraon, who is the executive producer of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., who is married to Jed Whedon, the brother of Joss. Right?
Okay.
And Jed and Marissa became executive producers and lead writers on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because it was kicked off by Joss Whedon. So he got his role most likely because Marissa is the executive producer on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right. Yeah, that show sort of spun up right after Avengers came out, basically. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was like this massive success.
Yeah, he was the one who kickstarted it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I got no problem with Jed Whedon. He's an amazing like artist and musical creator, and also like a very interesting creator himself. They both, him and Marissa, wrote on Spartacus for a really long time and then took over on or showrun Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But it's super awkward given like the Joss Whedon news as of late.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. A lot of times people have connections like that, like James Gunn, like Guardians of the Galaxy is like a favorite of mine, but I think Whedon kind of got him the gig on that a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot of that going around Hollywood, and Robert Rodriguez has some connections in his past to Miramax and all that, the Weinsteins, but everybody in Hollywood had connections to the Weinsteins. So, it's awkward.
It's a little bit awkward to like be like, oh, well, this is where these creators came from. I mean, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been like an exceptional show. So, like, I don't know, but nepotism is such a thing in Hollywood. It's really that gives you opportunities because, like, how do the showrunners of this show know Kevin? I don't know. Like, I mean, through the shared MCU connection, maybe, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that mean it's harder for new blood to get into the in crowd? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, was it Steph Green? She had like a hell of a resume. So it's you either have to have worked on like the most acclaimed TV series of our time, like The Americans or Better Call Saul, or be buddies with Whedon or JJ or Matt Reeves has the Batman coming out. I'm very psyched for the Batman. That movie exists because he's buddies with JJ, ultimately. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like, and this is the awkwardness about Hollywood. Like, JJ's son is like writing shows and movies and being given opportunities that many other writers maybe won't. And, Kevin and Marissa, siblings, they already know they can work together. That it's a truthism about humanity, unfortunately, but we would hope for a more opportunity-driven environment so that we could get unique voices in there. But it means taking a chance on people you don't know, right? And so it's hard. And I hate that that's a reality of Hollywood and how kind of scuzzy sometimes it feels. Not that this situation is scuzzy at all. It's just more, once you go down the rabbit hole, you're like, oh, this is awkward.
Yeah. And a big fat sidebar to this discussion too is like, we are big fans of Rick Famuyiwa, you know, and he came up by making a really excellent independent sort of comedy film called Dope. And that is why like indie cinema is so important. and in the
Ryan
current
Johnson, we're huge fans of Ryan, and he was like,
yeah, there you go.
Not in the mainstream either, right? Yeah.
It's so important to care about those small films where you can, where your access allows you, and to kind of champion them, you know, the ones you like, because I think that's where the opportunity comes from. And if movie theaters and disappear, or Disney strangles them to death, or whatever happens, you know, we live in a weird age right now. Those indie darlings are important.
They are, yeah. And it's like more experimentation than necessarily like for the money.
Right.
Yeah. Or for the focused group appeal of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways, so again, this is Once Upon a Time in the Outer Rim. And, you know, we look at these shows from a metamythical lens, talking about the genre and other connotative meaning that we get out of the shows. And so let's talk about a little bit of Star Wars. Alex, get into the summary.
Ready?
Yeah.
The Gathering Storm opens with Boba in the bacta tank, dreaming of fairly recent events. He rides through the desert alone, stops at Jabba's palace to scope the place out, and finds it heavily guarded. How long has he been wandering? 5 years now? How long were the Tuskens his family, his home? The sands shift imperceptibly out on the dunes. While sharing a meal with his bantha beside a campfire, Boba sees a brilliant white flare, some kind of explosion, light up the distance. He ventures out into the night and finds the body of master assassin Fennec Shand, gut shot and left for dead. He carries her to his bantha and rides for the nearest settlement, a hip body mod parlor on the edge of Mos Eisley. This woman's about to die, says Boba. She needs modification. Like Fett emerging from the Sarlacc in episode 1, she's both resurrected and transformed. Her belly opened and rebuilt with silver piping, copper wiring, and a series of glowing red lights. Boba asks the surgeon if he intends to close up her wound and cover up all that beautiful machinery, he says. When Fennec wakes beside the campfire, she's shocked and a little horrified at seeing her changed appearance. But the man who saved her life has plenty to offer: a Black Melon to help her heal, job prospects, plans to rid the world of its worst oppressors. I am Boba Fett, he tells her, as the first of the planet's binary suns begins to rise. She was under the impression he'd been killed. I was left for dead on the sands of Tatooine. Like you, I was rescued by the Sand People. They took me in, treated me as one of their own. I tried to help them. Instead, I got them massacred by Nikto speed bikers. Speed bikers defeated Tuskens, she asks. That's highly unlikely. He asks Fennec for one thing to pay back his kindness: her help retrieving his Fire Spray class starship from Bib Fortuna's hangar. He wants his armor back, literally and figuratively. Without the tribe, he's been made unwhole. Fate has kept him from becoming who he's meant to be, and his search for purpose has led him to Fennec. He means to take Fortuna's throne, he tells her, and forge a more just and equitable Tatooine for their kind. You want to head a Gatra, she says. Gatra being a Sanskrit word meaning lineage or clan. The two of them infiltrate Jabba's palace more or less quietly, battling some kitchen droids and Gamorrean along the way, and manage to fly away with Fett's old ship back in the hands of its rightful owner. Good work, he says as they're clearing out the hangar. Not bad yourself, Fennec tells him. With her debt repaid, Fennec is free to go wherever she pleases, but she wants to stay at Boba's side. I'll go for the ride. Together, they hunt down and obliterate the biker gang that slew Boba's tribe. They hover above the crater of the Sarlacc pit, looking for Boba's armor, and get a surprise when the tentacled beast suddenly lashes out at the ship, pulling it toward the sand. Fennec unstraps her harness and reaches up to flip an overhead switch inside the cockpit. It drops a seismic charge into the creature's maw and vanquishes it for good. Next time, don't touch my buttons, Boba says, playfully and perhaps a little flirtatiously, like a husband driving his prized Camaro. Fett tells Shand he wants her to stay and keep working with him as part of his new Gatra. I can offer you something no client has, he explains. Loyalty. I will cut you in on the success and pledge my life to protect yours. She's taken aback by this. Living with the Tuskens has made you soft, she says. No, it's made me strong. You can only get so far without a tribe. His physical scars all healed, the daimyo emerges from his bactopod and seeks out the Wookiee Black Chrysanthemum in hopes he'll join their cause. War's on the horizon, and they need all the help they can find. Fett and Fennec throw a feast for the 3 families of Mos Espa, the Trandoshans, the Aqualish, and the Klatooinians, and propose that they too work with them to drive the scourge of the Pike Syndicate from the planet. When these guests ask why they should honor Fett's claim to the throne at all, Boba's pet Rancor claws the floor beneath their feet, rattling the table. The families don't wish to fight for this new daimyo, but they agree to remain neutral in the coming conflict. Later, Fennec asks how much treasure they have in reserve. I have plenty of credits, says Boba. What I'm short on is muscle. Credits can buy muscle if you know where to look, she says. And a familiar melody leads us into the end credits, the theme of Din Djarin, the Mandalorian.
Yeah. All right.
Exciting.
What'd you think?
I loved it. I did not. I had trouble with the first viewing. I had to do some rewinding. I had to do some rewatching. Ultimately, I've decided that I love it, and I think the even numbered episodes are the good ones so far. As far as the exceptionally the good, messy, rich ones. Yeah, it was fun. And of course, like talking with you about some of the things that we see in it has made it even more fun and weird. I think that I sort of breathed a sigh of relief that we're finally getting their motivation and getting more Fennec. Mm-hmm. The timeline is confusing and there are other things that are confusing, but overall, really solid.
Absolutely. And like, At one point, Boba drops like my years with the Sand People, and we're like, it's been years. Like that did not feel like there are cheats that they could have done from a cinematography perspective to show they could have shown like the sun rise a bunch of times, and pass through the horizon a bunch, and like things kind of change a little bit, or the sands blow. There are some tricks that they could have done while he was with the Tuskens to show that time had passed, but it kind of felt like he took out the Pikes and then like went and asked for money, and then the Tuskens were destroyed. That did not feel like that much time had passed.
They should have given him a big bushy silver beard, and then he shaves it off. I don't know.
Yeah, there are things, and his costume change happened while he was with the Tuskens, and so like it felt fresh rather than like dirty and old and like dirtied up, like because he'd been living with the Tuskens. They didn't do any of that kind of aging of the situation when it's been like years, right? And so he's like trying to find meaning post Tusken massacre, which looks like they're dead. Like it doesn't, I mean, I don't, unless he discovers them on Tatooine somewhere, the ones that were missing.
It's very tricky because they've sort of planted all these what ifs in the script of like, maybe the Pikes killed them, maybe the Nightwind assassins killed them, maybe they got away. It's very it's messy. Like we don't quite know, but it does feel like for now they're just going with like they really are dead.
I mean, if we're loud enough, they'll just bring people back from the dead.
Yeah. Get those hashtags ready, and
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I'm in favor of it.
Yeah. I did notice that the creator of the Tusken language that we had covered in our first episode. Troy Kotzer was actually credited at the end of this episode for the creation of the Tuscan language.
I did notice that, and I can't tell if like I just wasn't paying attention for the last 3 episodes, but it was really nice to actually see that. Like,
he tweeted out that he was happy to see that he was credited.
Yeah, that was the other thing, right? Is like he waited until now to tweet about it, so that does feel like it wasn't just me not paying attention, but like he really was.
I think he was only credited in this episode.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
weird.
We talked about it in our first episode. Yeah. So if you're listening, thank you for crediting him. He absolutely deserves all the credit.
Yes.
And yeah, let's get into it. So Boba's kind of lost. He's trying to figure out how to get his ship back. He feeds his bantha meat. Banthas eat meat, ? That shocked me. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you feeding this bantha meat? But I assume they eat meat. They don't have teeth to eat meat, but it's fine. Whatever. They have the round capped meat, which is for eating, or teeth, which is for eating like vegetable matter. Mm-hmm. They don't have like sharp teeth to cut through meat. So
right. Yeah.
You have to chew it up for him.
They must be going with like an omnivore thing. Like banthas are just humans with a lot of fur on them or something.
They have cute tongues. I want a pet bantha now. Like I want a miniature one that like lives in my house.
It was a very cute scene. Well, 2 scenes that he had with his bantha. It was really good.
Yeah. And then, he finds Fennec because of the explosion. So we sync up with Mandalorian season 1, right, with where he's at. And he finds her, rescues her, brings her to this mod parlor, which I guess he knew where it was. He knew where to go, right?
Seems like it. Mm-hmm.
What did you think of this place?
I loved it. I think that I imagine if people were complaining about the scooter bike Vespa things before, they're going to really complain about this scene. But I enjoyed this sequence. There is a lot going on, some of it more obvious and some of it very not obvious and some of it a little baffling. And I appreciated how different it was. Like, we'll get into the genre stuff later, but I thought it was very fun. I thought the choice of music was very surprising, and it had kind of, it definitely was. It was a kind of scene we've seen before, i.e. like the birth of Darth Vader in a very different tone, to say the least.
It also felt like a tattoo parlor. So like that kind of like punk or alternative body modification culture, like people just like hanging out outside of it who are like waiting for their turn to get like a new body mod. It's really a fascinating thing that I don't know what it does to Star Wars yet, like, because this is a new, although we've seen body mods, especially like in the comics.
Yeah.
And like we've seen them from like a technological terror type way, right? Like it's Darth Vader who's more machine now than man, and how that kind of is reflected in this concept of loss of humanity. We haven't really seen it in a this is my choice, man. What are you gonna do about it? Kind of punk subculture. And I don't know what it's going to do to Star Wars, but I'm really fascinated by it and really kind of interested in what it means larger scale, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels very new. So like, is this like maybe something that's new galaxy culture wide, that like this is like a rebellion against the Empire's former control, and like now like post Vietnam sort of subcultures that popped up post Vietnam, or like out of the hippie movements where people decided to dress differently. Like it feels like that, and I don't know what it's going to do yet, but it's interesting.
Yeah, you had like the influenza in World War I, and out of that came, the Great Gatsby and the Roaring '20s and all this like poetry and sexy books and stuff. I don't know.
And like the hippies came, post Vietnam, and in reaction to that, but that also created a ton of subculture outcome. And it feels like that a little bit, like post-war subculture, which is interesting in and of itself. It is like trying to feel alive through body modification. Cool.
Yeah. It's weird too, right? Because people are like, oh, this is new and different, but you've also got the sort of like meta textual element of like, you have Star Wars, this thing that this guy George made, and now you have like all these new voices from around the world coming in and like saying, I'm going to put my Robert Rodriguez spin on it, you know, my etc. You know, and that's really cool. And you know, I think that that's a symbolic way of seeing that play out. You know, we're adding our color and grafting on some newness to something that, you know, cultural critics tell us, you know, Star Wars is always going to be this one thing. It can never evolve. It's limited. It's, you know, it's a very small box. You know, I think Favreau and Rodriguez and, you know, a bunch of other people are coming in and saying, yeah, but what if it's not?
Yeah.
Hopefully. That's kind of fascinating. That's really cool and exciting.
Yeah. We get saving. So through that, we get to save Fennec, and definitions of what is saving and the body horror involved is like, it's very shocking. And I'm happy that Fennec reacted in the way that she reacted. Right? Like, to me, it's just completely horrifying to, in a way, kind of remove that area of a woman's body is either like by choice or, you know, it wasn't by choice. It's interesting to see how people are reacting to this episode because they knew it was going to come versus say how people reacted to Frog Lady and the loss of her reproduction in season 2 of The Mandalorian. And I would say because they knew it was coming, you know, it's less horrific, but it's still horrific on some level towards femininity or females or people who can reproduce.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's definitely, I mean, like, yeah, you obviously bring a lot more sort of perspective to that than I do, but I was horrified at just kind of like, you know, she doesn't know that this is happening to her. And, you know, she's sort of used to this one mode of existence. And here comes this like, you know, wraith in the night to be like, oh, I'm going to like pull you out of this realm that you're in and like, you know, give you passage to somewhere else. And, you know, I'm going to save you, which is all well and good. Yeah. But yeah, then she wakes up and she has this like existential crisis of like, wait, what the hell did you do to me? And it is horrifying. It's very like Ridley Scott, Alien, you know, Blade Runner type shit. It's not exactly like the Star Wars we're used to seeing necessarily.
Yeah, and although it's like played off like in this like cutesy fun environment, not really. I mean, obviously, but it's a lighter environment to say like Vader's transformation, which is also sort of horrifying in how they play it out.
Right.
It has that level of body horror and like what is happening to me. I am now part machine. You know, what does that mean? But it's like your choice was die or like get saved in this way, and that's how it's framed, which sort of makes it a little bit better, I guess, to the audience. And he shares his Black Melon with her.
I also remember, this is like a little tangential, but I remember being kind of horrified like the second time I watched Solo by L3 being uploaded to the Falcon after she had died. Yep. It's a little bit like that. It's like, you thought you were dead. Like, no, we need your help with something. So we're kind of, I don't know, the call to adventure in a very weird, horrifying, post-human way, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, we'll get into this a little bit in the mythical section. I mean, it is a rebirth, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you're taking on a new life, a life that you never thought was possible / was coming for you. There's also some other symbolism going on, but it still feels like there's not enough women in the writer's room.
I'll grant you that. You know,
like, I mean, I owe it all to Ming-Na Wan for reacting in that way. Thank you.
Yes.
Because that's important to react in that way. But wow. Okay.
She has more than one moment in this episode where it might not have even been in the script, but she added something really special in her facial reaction to things. Yeah, she does a good job in this one.
Choosing to live the character outside of the page of what is written, and giving us more. All right, let's talk about the Black Melon. They're weird. I love them. They're absolutely bizarre, and it's like the fruit of the desert.
Yes, they almost look like a spider's abdomen, and then you bite into it and it's like coconut milk or something. It's very weird.
And he pushes down on it. There's like a little poof of something as he opens it. Always like there's like it's like under pressure or something, or like there's dust that shoots off. It's like the desert will provide. It's like the spice of Tatooine. It even like heals you, right? Like that's fascinating too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hard to say. I mean, there's the fruit of like Eden and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he says sort of it's odd at first and takes some getting used to, but then you begin to crave it, which my gut reaction to that was that these are two sort of like hardened killers.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, I've been having these emotions lately, and like,
I've been feeling things.
Yeah, you got to check this shit out. Like, I haven't really killed anybody for a while, which, we'll get to that. But like, want to talk about feelings? I don't know. That's sort of where my head went, that it was like this about,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, what do you do? Like, he's making her his family by sharing a meal, like the same way that the Tuskens showed him by sharing the Black Melon with him. He's a like brought and like I think it's described in one of the things, like they find a kinship, and I'm like, they married. We'll get into that. It's fine. Yeah. And they like, it is him like realizing that like, and through the course of the episode, and they don't do it like right away. He's like, hey, look, we deserve better. Like, life is more than this. But it's solidly done in these little vignettes throughout the episode as they have time to talk, sharing a fire, sharing a hearth together, which is like a union. We'll get into that more.
Okay.
But they decide to go. He's like, I got to go and kill these people, kill these speeder bike gang people. And Fennec's like, it wasn't them. You're crazy. They couldn't have killed them. Killed the Tuskens. But they go and do it anyways. Like after they get the ship, right? But like they're talking about this concept that the speeder bike gang killed the Tuskens. I mean, it's starting to lay the seeds of doubt that it was actually them. It was probably the Pike.
Yeah, you brought up the A New Hope thing, like, they did not, but we were meant to think they did. Like that whole idea of somebody smart like the Pike Syndicate or the Empire would maybe know to use the symbol of the biker gang, and also they kind of know what's up around there anyway. Like they would probably know that
they know who the two gangs are, and they're like, well, maybe we'll get rid of both of them, maybe, and then like we'll pit them against each other and give him motivation to go and kill those guys, right? So specifically, it's when the Jawa caravan was attacked, and Luke and Obi-Wan are like, it looks like sand people, but I've never seen them hit anything this big before, and it's like, we were meant to think they were, and it was actually the Empire all along. And then we get the whole rescuing of the fire spray ship. Do you want to talk about the fact that it's not named its unfortunate name any longer?
Yeah, I mean, he just says like my fire spray gun ship or something like that. Yeah.
So like, to me, there's two things. So I fully approve of a company who realizes that something was named unfortunately, changing that in future properties so that it's not named that, unfortunately. Or as an example, if an actor is really unfortunate, firing that actor and not working with them again.
Sure.
I'm cool with that. It's awesome. Right? Also, if you lose your car and you report it to the police, they don't care that you called your car Darla. They only care what the make and model is and the color.
Mm-hmm.
And if he had said a green fire spray class gunship, I would have been like even more like, it's a green Toyota Corolla.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a win-win because, nowhere did they say the name of Boba's ship in Empire, Return of the Jedi, like on screen. So you're not censoring anything. You don't have to put a disclaimer about racial sensitivity, like at the start of the movie or anything like that. You don't censor it or rename it in the course of George's films. But, you get now the opportunity to say, well, now if we want to give it a name, we can name it whatever the hell we want to. So it's a little convenient for them, granted. We're giving them credit for something that's almost like serendipitous. But yeah, basically now the writers get to, if Jon Favreau wants to name Boba Fett's ship, little Jon Favreau, who was a kid playing with these action figures and going to the movies as a kid, he's probably pretty psyched about that. So,
I mean, I have a name. I tweeted about it, but
yeah, I guess I did see that. One. Yeah,
it's fine. I won't bring it up on the podcast.
Okay.
Let's dig into Fennec's journey a little bit because we get so much Fennec in this episode.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about this?
Well, I really, we still don't quite know her motivations, but we start to sort of see her interior life and kind of what she's been through in the like recent history, which we hadn't got a lot of that before. It was very much like her role on the show was in service to like Boba doing king stuff, and making moves. Here we see, the stranger sort of wander up to her and find her, dead and resurrect her, granted without her like knowledge or whatever. I guess it's sort of like the Sleeping Beauty thing, right? Like it's a little bit like True Love's first kiss, but I guess we're going to go with the interpretation that, he's doing the right thing and we're glad to have her, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, there's all this stuff. She needs modification, which is like a very, I'm going to change this woman. It's like that meme, like I can fix her, or I can fix him, he's literally saying like, she needs fixed, she needs changed. He puts a bag of coins on the surgeon's table, which is a pretty like literal symbol for like the coins placed over the eyes for the boatmen and like Greek myth, I guess. I thought of, with like, you have sort of the sticks metaphor with the droid in the Mandalorian season 1. And some of that imagery is really beautiful and it stayed with me, pretty well. And so when I think of like Favreau, I tend to associate that with the stuff he's doing here on a symbolic level. So, I'm thinking of how Boba is sort of like leaving the spirit realm. He's sort of like finishing his sort of time wandering asphodel or whatever, so to speak. And now he's kind of like, hey, slams down the coins and says,
let's get out of here together.
Mm-hmm.
Did it feel very, like, to me, it had a little bit of a feel of like the Bionic Woman or the $6 Million Man? Like a little bit of like that, like you've been in an accident and we're going to use science to save you, like regardless. But it came off as a little odd, like for me personally, like not the same feeling because it wasn't superhero-ish. It was horror.
There's a lot of stuff. Like I haven't seen like $6 Million Man, but I like things that come to mind are like Source Code or like RoboCop. And like this idea that like your body
has failed you because it couldn't live up to the harsh profession that you have entered into.
Yeah. And I sort of had the stray thought, like watching this, like in the moment that Anakin is like burning on the shores of Mustafar, would he want Palpatine to come along and turn him into Vader at that moment? Or would he kind of just prefer to die? I don't know. I feel like, it's a similar thing where, I don't know. Once you get into this sort of medical stuff, it's a weird kind of frontier of philosophy and ethics, and it's weird to talk about. It's weird to talk about because,
and in many ways he spends the whole episode in the script convincing her that she deserves a better life, and symbolically, like, this is all part of that conversation that's happening, right? Like, you've been changed, you've been given another lease on life, you're not the same, like all of that. But he spends a lot of time to basically say, like, it could be better if we were in charge of ourselves, and we always were doing this for ourselves, right? And it's not what I love is their relationship, in that straight up says that they're gonna be partners, basically, and like pledges his life to her.
It's a very subtle thing, and like the first time I saw The Last Jedi, I didn't really see it as like a romance thing happening until, I saw it a couple more times and people were like talking about that. It was not an immediate obvious thing. Watching this, I see a lot more of that, where I mean, they're talking about marriage. They're,
I do want to actually bring in the symbolism stuff now, but just because, like, it's so huge, right? In many cultures, hand fasting over top of a fire is considered to be marriage. Sharing a meal around a fire is part of being in a marriage. Building a home together. The ship represents the home. The words uses specifically about building a gotra, starting a house. So they're starting a family together.
Lineage, yeah.
A lineage.
Yes.
Living with the Tuscans made me soft. No, it made me so strong. Like, it made him realize he couldn't do anything without starting a family. Like, quite literally, like, so many Raylos have talked about how the hand holding scene over top of the fire was like a marriage of sorts, right? Like, it was literally, we have, maybe it's a little bit more on the side of like a business partnership, but he wears her share in every urn. Like, I give you my life, my happiness, my health, and I'm gonna literally vow.
Yes. Yeah. Pledge my life to protect yours or something.
Yeah. And she's like not even sold. So it would be really easy by the end of season, see the pledge back to him. And like, but yeah, he's a total wife guy.
Yeah. It's I have a bunch of notes about it, but he basically, says like, I would die for you. The light, they're in complete darkness. She's dead, and he sees that white flare of light, which, you could argue is like God or the Force or whatever your poison is. It's like this. It's this sign
of love.
Yeah, Cupid stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's like this divine sign of like, go this way, like this is where your destiny lies or whatever. And then I mean, it's like you have two souls kind of alone out in the desert. It's
she's his equal and opposite. Fascinating is that once they actually have this psyche, right, it's end of his, right? So immediately after it happened, kind of finishes business in the past, physics that.
Yeah. Which,
they know what they're doing. They're absolutely the robot. You congratulate.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, well, okay, so you put away the past.
Yeah.
That hardship with Fenn.
Yep. They meet in the darkness of night, and as they start to talk and get to know one another, we see the suns start to come up, light enter their lives, and like it's sort of like he's back in the living force or the present, that Qui-Gon thing about like be in the moment rather than like, in the realm of like ghosts and dreams and all that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just very apparent that that's what is said. So we get him waking up, and he's just that much more resolute now that his sort of healing is done. right? But we've talked about this. This was all cycle at this point. And so, I did want to briefly talk about how going back into the dreamland, that was the marriage stuff that happened. In the dreamland, we got Bib's castle. We got the droids. We got 3 different droids in one scene, which is just so good. We got the cook droid, which makes me think of Ben Solo in Daniel Jose Older's Last Shot, and the cooking droid that tries to kill Ben Solo.
Right.
That would totally be very scary. We get the sort of droid that assigns work in Jabba's old palace, sort of like the butler droid. And then we get the rat catcher bunny droid. I love bunny droid.
Yeah, it's very cute.
And we get like good interplay between Fennec and Boba around the ship and around, the Sarlacc pit, and sort of when the death of the speeder gang happens, which like that's one of those things like he's going to regret in the future.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Then he like wakes up from his thing and he's like, I'm going to go and find the Wookiee, get some more help. What did you think of the Garcia scene? It was such an interesting scene.
Yeah. I mean, we sort of start with just Black Chrysanthemum's point of view, really. Right. I think Boba isn't in there yet. And so you have this very unspoken conflict happening where he sees Trandoshans sort of having fun and laughing it up. And I think the unspoken thing there is that in Star Wars history, like the Trandoshans are infamous for being like Wookiee enslavers.
Yep. Or doing the Wookiee hunts, right?
Yeah. Like being sort of instruments of the Empire and the enslavement of the Wookiees. And so, he's not too happy to see them laughing it up and having a good time while he's sitting there alone. And so eventually he sort of says like, F this, I'm going to take action.
I'm going to pick a fight.
I'm going to show them who Black Chrysanthemum is at this moment in time. And there's all this dialogue where Boba shows up, Garsa Fwip says, you are that great and mighty warrior, Chrysanthemum, but bloodshed is old news, and now everybody is getting in touch with their emotions and getting married and chilling out, and so why don't you not rip this guy's arm off? And Boba's like, listen to her or whatever, and so of course he pauses. And he's like, you raised some good points. And then he tears the guy's arm off and leaves. And Boba's like, it was worth a shot, and Garza appreciates that. And and then so he basically just says, you look like you could use a job, mate. There's that word mate again. I think that's our second mate in Star Wars live action, maybe, possibly, which I loved.
Yes. People love that it's added into Star Wars now. I really, really appreciated this because it totally felt like a Western, like the brothel owner who's trying to de-escalate a situation. And it was absolutely amazing. And it was an amazing way to introduce the history of a character that we've only known in the comics in like a very impressive way.
Yeah. Like, he's a legend in the sort of underworld circles and like all that stuff. It's also funny how it's a remix of like a bunch of A New Hope scenes, like Greedo and also Obi-Wan slicing dude's arm off, and also like, sorry about the mess, and also like the whole, droids don't pull Wookiees' arms out of their sockets.
Yeah.
It's very much like a remix track where they're just kind of playing with what we know about Star Wars as a way to build up Chrysanthemum.
There's a bunch of similarities to A New Hope in this particular episode. Like, as we pointed out, just like sort of like it feels like echoes in some ways. It's a different, it took on a different shape and a different form, but it echoes a little bit. Yeah.
Very fun.
And then we get into sort of Boba and Fennec trying to convince the families of Mos Espa to help or stay out of the way, which absolutely felt like just a standard gangster scene, like from any movie, where you'd have like the triad, and you'd have the Italian mafia, and you'd have, you know, like all of these different families from different groups who were like coming together in an uneasy agreement to either stay out of the way of a coming war or work together. And they all sit down at the same table and sort of, you know, respect each other, but are also very cautious of each other's powers.
Yeah. I watched The Godfather, you know, maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And one of the most important scenes in the movie, I think, is kind of like all the families sit down and kind of have this big, you know, sort of dinner table discussion thing. And it's basically like, hey, what would you guys think if we got into trafficking narcotics? Like, would you be cool with that? And they're like, I think they say like, no, we would not be cool with that. Have a nice night. You know, it's like this very respectful, very Boba like thing. But basically it's like you're gonna probably regret that if you know, go against our wishes or whatever. And here the Rancor kind of sends the message for him that like Boba has power, and, you know, you don't have to.
What we talked about last episode about like his pet representing his power.
Yeah, he doesn't have to raise a finger, basically.
Yeah, because his Rancor, who we need a name for, so we can get like toys of him and stuff, right? Can't just be Boba's Rancor, has to have a name. Name things, please, Jon Favreau. I know you're bad at it. We knew that from the first season of The Mandalorian, but please name things. We need names. Let Pablo name them if you don't want to name them. Right? He's good at names.
Right.
But you know, it goes to that symbol of ruling, right? Boba had a Rancor. He has got a Rancor. Oh, maybe we actually have to respect him. Like, they literally ask that question, and then the Rancor jumps up, and it's exactly what I said. It's like, he, you know, this is his lion, or this is his Cerberus, or this is his right to rule, because he already rules over a powerful creature that you're afraid of. Yeah.
Yep. Your people rode the great mythosaur.
Yeah, exactly.
Stories. Yeah. Good stuff.
And then, oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, it feels pretty resolved. Like Fennec's like, you know, do you trust them? And Boba's like, yeah, they're not going to like fool around. Like they know like that I mean business, and that I'm not, you know, a threat to them or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely felt that way. I mean, we might get one of them betraying him.
Sure.
You know, or whatever. But yeah. I mean, yeah, we're going into a Pike war, but like we're only halfway done this season. I'm happy we have motivations. I'm happy we have a little bit more about, like, it's about the Pikes. You know, they're worried about the Pikes coming in because the Pikes are that much of a threat in general, right? Because they're smart and they're tricksy, and and they tricked him before, and so, you know, it's interesting. I'm going to assume they tricked him before. I'm going to assume that they were behind the Tuskens' death. I still hope that the Tuskens are miraculously okay, or at least, you know, Tusken warrior and Tusken kid are okay, right, and we find them by the end of this. That would be very satisfying to have that be the end of this season.
Agreed.
And then we hear, like, as they make reference, like, oh, how much do you have left in your, you know, credits? And he's got, well, credits can buy muscle. And then we hear the Mando theme, which, oh goodness, audio foreshadowing. Poor people who cannot hear the music and just can't, or don't hear music that way, you know?
Interesting point. Yeah, I mean, like, we've sort of trained ourselves to look for certain things, and yeah,
Star Wars sort of trains you to listen for thematic motif in the music, right? And it absolutely was Mando themed, Din Djarin's music. So it would be cool if he came back.
Seems like part of what made this episode so arguably confusing on a first watch, like, or at least little jagged edges in there, is you have like all that stuff with like the 5 years have passed in the whole like Tuscan subplot, but then also you get like Mando season 1 story beats happening from like chapter 5, I think, and then also you get, we're now post Mando season 2 apparently, at the end.
What is time? It feels very COVID applicable. Like we all live in an infinite time loop of weirdness that backtracks onto itself. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
It's I feel you in that it takes a little bit more heavy lifting to get there.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. There's sort of like one thing that I guess we're kind of saving genre and inspiration to the end, but I really wanted to talk about the end of his Night Sea journey. So like when the droid is like, you are completely healed, and he wraps him in his new clothes and sort of like it's the robe on him to say like, you are a new person now, Boba Fett. But it's dark, like the sun has set, right? Like he's completed his journey. Every other time that they shown him in the Bacta pod, it's been light out. Finally the sun has gone down. Fennec's there to greet him. She represents like his equal and opposite other half, that is like the feminine aspects of himself that he was missing. Like he even kind of comments like, you're Fennec Shand, oh, you're Boba Fett. Like they're kind of like equals, but yet opposites, and they're going to make a go of this together. And it feels very symbolic in him sort of finally processing all of the things that he had gone through. Yeah.
There's also a lot of funny little ironies between them in this episode that I think kind of highlight, the way that they understand one another and the way that they are foils for one another. So like she makes the joke that you said that you liked about the the scars on the inside. Her wound is like open for all to see. You can see the machinery, and then also there's that sort of like, he does the like don't play with my buttons thing in the in the ship that is like fairly playful. But he like took her to a body mod shop and had her like rebuilt. So it's just like a funny little ironies throughout. Which I think served to reinforce, that they have this very deep, unspoken understanding of each other, which may or may not be earned given the runtime of this season and episode. But we're happy with where things are going. I think
they have excellent charisma together, and so that does a lot of the heavy lifting. Like when you see there are like sometimes there's little clips of them like being playful with each other where they're just doing interviews, like that comes off that they like each other as people, and that's nice. I love it. The fact that they are together and wanting to take on the world together is very romantic. And I gotta say, this guy wants a wife and kids. He wants to build a family, and he literally says it, but like, make it romantic. Like, that's all I'm asking for. Like, don't make it all this like, oh, you could read it romantic. Like, why is this so shameful that he's hot for hot fox assassin chick?
It's very dialed down, with maybe one exception, which I really like, when he sort of makes his proposal and she sort of like blushes and looks away and smiles and like takes this very meaningful pause. And then she like says, "You've gone soft," and like that. I liked that bit, but you're right that it is so dialed back.
Make it overt. There's no problem with them literally like holding hands and kissing. Like,
it needs to heat up a little bit for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm reminded of an interview or a tweet or something where he joined the realm of Star Wars with Attack of the Clones. And I remember Tamara kind of making a joke about how he hated the romance in that movie. And so I don't know if that's like somebody's input coming in and saying like, oh, don't make this like corny and, like Attack of the Clones was, and have it all, one of those kissing movies or whatever. But yeah, it could stand to heat up a little bit for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they even have it a balcony scene. Like,
oh yeah, at the end, you mean?
Yeah. And like, I actually just don't think that there's a way you can read it as, oh, they're just coworkers. Like in the words in the text, they're like, we're starting a family together. We basically married. Like, just make it overt, guys. Like, I hate to be whiny like that, but like, there's nothing wrong with showing outward displays of affection with two people. And actually, you know what? It would be very good rep for older audiences who are like, I want to see myself represented on screen being the hero and also getting the girl or getting the guy, come on.
Yeah. Right now, I have a 4-year-old, so my brain is like warped by having a 4-year-old, but like I see them very much as like Shrek and Fiona, right now.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Isn't it like Shrek and Fiona vibes at the moment? And like,
you're not wrong. Let's just say that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's very much like kind of, all the desire is there. We know what's happening, but yeah, it's very like it has.
If the season ends with a kiss happening, like somewhere, like after a big battle, and they're like, finally I can confess, like blah blah blah, I'll be happy, like, because then it's very much like Remington Steele, and they finally like through all of these things that have happened, confess to each other and have a moment where they have one kiss or something like that. I'll be happy at the end. But if it doesn't happen, I'll be like, wow, you guys are pansies. You're so afraid of emotion, and you're so afraid of romance and what people will say. And it's so fundamental to Star Wars, and you're missing it.
I mean, God, if they're going to watch episode 9 and say that was a platonic kiss of gratitude and all that shit, right? Like, they're definitely going to say it about this.
Yeah. And I don't appreciate walking the gray line, saying the words, we're basically married, like over a fire, and showing it all symbolically, and then not having it pay off in an actual display of affection. That's you're being a pansy if you don't actually show it.
Yeah, especially after like Loki, where it was like so explicit and like colorful and like,
oh yeah,
it was like, all
we'll
there.
Just go to Marvel for our romance now. Where are we? Who would have thought we would be here? Like,
yeah,
Star Wars used to be romantic. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's
you got afraid of boys.
Yeah, they want to walk the line where people can like mute the TV or whatever, turn off the subtitles, and just kind of, enjoy the pew pew and just deny like the text.
You're literally denying such a huge chunk of the original trilogy, which you worship so much. The prequels trilogy, which is fundamentally important, and the subtext of so much of the sequel trilogy, regardless of people who say that it's not romantic and platonic. It is not. Star Wars is about love, and they've created a family together, so let them kiss.
Agreed.
There you go. It's my rant for today. Well, any further thoughts before we wrap up today?
Just that, like you said, this story is going places that, we want to see it go, and doing new things, and it has every reason to kind of like be a pleasant surprise. And it won't be if it is heavily shaped by that fear of backlash from like that that very loud vocal minority of the, the sort of like older white male audience who just really, doesn't want soft boba, that like Fennec says,
Yeah, you've gone soft.
Commit to the story that you are intentionally telling. It's the same, the same thing with like episode 9. It's like, okay, you can't just sprinkle in, a bit for audience group A, a bit for audience group B and C. Like you need to just be an artist and a storyteller and commit to your Boba Fett fanfic, written by Jon Favreau, if that's what you're doing, let it be what you want it to be, and like don't care about
and I absolutely love what Boba and Fennec's conversation outcomes, and it really is sort of like the thesis of this show and Star Wars, which is like, you think strength comes from being a badass. No, actually strength comes from relationships, from caring about one another, and from love. And if that is not sealed with a kiss by the end of this season, you have failed the period on that sentence. You haven't succeeded.
Yeah, I love everything this series is saying and doing. It's just it needs to kind of
commit,
through,
be brave, and you've been brave. You've been so brave so far. So I'm just gonna tell you, like, unless you do it, unless you fully commit to the statement that you said that love is strength, love is strength, then you've missed the point. And with that, we will wrap this episode. But we both loved it. It had some weird things about it. I definitely had some points to make. I'm excited to see where this goes. We've run out of anything that was in any of the trailers.
Yeah.
All of the scenes are done, so we have no idea what we're getting now.
It'll be interesting. Yeah. I think Tatooine is going to change, and where we might go to some unexpected places, hopefully.
That'll be cool. All right, Alex, where can people find you if they're looking for you online?
I'm on Twitter at Alex J. Kane with a K, or usatoday.com or review.com and various other publications.
Awesome. Thanks for everybody for coming out, and we will be back next week with another episode of Once Upon a Time in the Outer Rim. Cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is orchestral music by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force: Brad, Melody, Night Huntress in Wild Space, Felicia, How Rude, Anna Perez, Macau Mom, Neil, James, Joe Allen D, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, Scott C, and Susan. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. Check out our other channel on YouTube or other podcast feeds, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, or our website, whattheforce.ca, or on our Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.